News Under the Sky is launching its English language program. To introduce our audience to this milestone, News Under the Sky was founded in 2011 and for more than 15 years has served as the first private Tibetan-language news channel, gradually growing into a mainstream source for television news and social commentary. Over the years, the channel has produced 314 television programs along with numerous other video productions. Today, we are pleased to use Namloyak Lhade's AI channel to open the new English language program. From here on, News Under the Sky will broadcast important news and history in English, covering a wide range of topics. Various experts and hosts will take part in the English language program. This marks the channel's first English language program currently on air.
There is a Tibetan saying, seeing the suffering of others is like having sparks land on your clothing. But experiencing that suffering yourself is like fire burning on your own skin. On the evening of Thursday, July 2, 2026, at around 7 p.m., Lhade Rangzin, a 52-year-old Tibetan living in New York, set himself on fire outside the United Nations headquarters in Manhattan. Dressed in traditional Tibetan robes, he placed the Tibetan snow lion flag on the sidewalk before carrying out the act. Emergency personnel arrived quickly, but he was later pronounced dead at Bellevue Hospital. Leaflets reading "China out of Tibet" were found at the scene. Rangzin reportedly released a video message calling on Tibetans to unite and continue the struggle for Tibet's freedom. In the message, he stated that the suffering of the Tibetan people stems directly from the loss of Tibet's independence. For many, freedom remains only an idea. But since 2009, more than 160 Tibetans have transformed that aspiration into action through self-immolation. The suffering endured by these individuals is not symbolic or abstract. It is physical, immediate, and unimaginably painful. Flames consume the skin, burn through the flesh, and attack the nerves beneath. The body struggles for breath as the fire tightens around the neck and chest. The English word excruciating comes from Latin, originally referring to the agony of crucifixion. It is a word that fully captures the pain endured by these Tibetan men and women as they leave this world in flames. To learn more, please read my book, A Flame for Freedom in Tibet, which explores the origins and meaning of this movement from multiple perspectives. Why does Lhade Rangzin call for the restoration of Tibet's independent status? In my previous episode, I discussed the self-immolation protest carried out by Tibetan activist Lhade Rangzin in front of the United Nations headquarters in New York. Today, I want to focus on one important question. Why does he call for the restoration of Tibet's independence and for unity among exiled Tibetans? As Tibetans often say, unity is strength. Without unity, nothing meaningful can be achieved. That is why Lhade Rangzin repeatedly emphasized both Tibetan independence and the unity of the Tibetan exile community. I came to know Lhade Rangzin through the well-known Tibetan political activist Tenpa Gyal, and we once had a long video conversation discussing Tibet's political future. To understand Lhade Rangzin's position, we must look back at history. First, Tibet became a victim of the Cold War. In the 1950s, the struggle between the communist bloc led by the Soviet Union and the liberal international order reached its height. Because of Tibet's strategic geographic position in Asia, it gained enormous geopolitical importance. Historical records show that Stalin and Mao Zedong viewed Tibet not as territory, but as a region of major international significance of the communist bloc. During this period, the Chinese Communist Party moved to occupy Tibet militarily. However, because of the communist ideology of borderlessness, Stalin did not originally advocate nationalism. At the same time, international law created complications for the new People's Republic of China. Earlier international agreements, including the 1919 League of Nations Framework and the 1945 United Nations Charter, emphasized that territory should not be acquired through force. In response, communist leaders reframed Tibet politically and historically to legitimize PRC control. Later, Stalin adopted a compromise approach to Tibet, instructing Mao Zedong that Tibet is part of China. Since then, institutions such as the China Tibetology Research Center have attempted to claim that Tibet has always been part of China. And they continue to reinforce this narrative through various official channels and policies today. However, many Tibetans believe these efforts have instead supported policies of cultural assimilation inside Tibet. Today, we can better understand why Lobga Rangzin called for the restoration of Tibet's independent status, and why many Tibetans continue to oppose the so-called law on promoting national unity and progress, which the People's Republic of China began implementing on July 1, 2026. In the next episode, I will discuss other important aspects of Lobga Rangzin's self-immolation protest and its wider political impact. On July 2, 2026, a Tibetan man named Lobga Rangzin set himself on fire in front of the United Nations headquarters in New York City. He later died of his injuries. This was not a protest in a remote corner of the world. It happened steps from the heart of global diplomacy, live-streamed, witnessed, and impossible to ignore. Will this change U.S. policy toward Tibet overnight? Although immediately not. But its political and symbolic weight in America could be significant. First, Congress. Bipartisan lawmakers who already champion Tibet issues are likely to seize this moment. Statements, hearings, pressure on the State Department. This comes as Congress is already weighing the Assuring the Future of Tibet Act of 2026, legislation meant to deepen U.S. engagement with Tibetans after the passing of the 14th Dalai Lama. For these lawmakers, this tragedy becomes evidence that repression in Tibet is not history, it's happening now. Second, the People's Republic of China's new ethnic unity law. The self-immolation followed the law's enactment by just one day, and Washington may respond by criticizing it more openly, tying Tibet policy closer to the Uyghur issue and framing both as part of a broader story of forced assimilation under Beijing. Third, moral weight. Since 2009, more than 160 Tibetans have self-immolated, most inside Tibet, most invisible to Western audiences. This one is different. It happened on American soil, outside the UN, involving a man who had lived in the US for decades. That makes it far harder for officials and the public to look away. Fourth, limits. US policy on Tibet has held steady for decades. Support for human rights, for religious freedom, alongside a clear-eyed recognition, as in 2020 the State Department itself has said, that Beijing's hold on Tibet began with military occupation in the 1950s. One act, however powerful, is unlikely to shift that broader strategic posture. But perhaps the deepest impact will be historical. This moment, the snowland flag, the flames, the crowd outside the UN, becomes a new image seared into the Tibetan movement's memory. For a generation of Americans and the democratic countries, Tibet may stop being a distant, the Tibetan Plateau question, and become something that happened right here, at the doorstep of the world.
Why Tibet is back on the world stage. Last week, a Tibetan independent activist man named Lobga Rangzin set himself on fire outside United Nations headquarters in New York. He died from his burns on that day. He wasn't the first Tibetan to do this. More than 160 Tibetans have self-immolated since 2009, but he was the first to do it on American soil. And it happened just one day after Beijing's new Ethnic Unity and Progress Law came into force, a law many see as the latest step in erasing Tibetan identity. A law many see as the latest step in erasing Tibetan identity. In response, the U.S. State Department said it will keep calling on the PRC to return to dialogue with the Dalai Lama. Here's what's interesting. Secretary of State Marco Rubio spent years in Congress backing bills like the Tibet Policy and Support Act, legislation that explicitly called for talks between Beijing and the Dalai Lama's representatives. But since becoming Secretary of State in January 2025, his public statements have shifted. He talks about the PRC restricting foreign access to Tibet. He talks about supporting Tibetan culture and human rights. He does not directly call for negotiations between Dharamshala and Beijing. Why the change? I'd argue Washington already knows dialogue won't produce results. Beijing doesn't honor agreements, not even ones made with the US itself. And Beijing benefits from that pattern. It lets the PRC project an image, at home and abroad, of a world run by two superpowers who negotiate as equals. While Chinese nationalism, especially online, keeps burning hot. So does Beijing actually take Dharamshala seriously? No, and Washington knows that too. But here's the thing. This isn't wasted motion. Reviving the call for dialogue does three things. First, it drags the Tibet issue back into the spotlight after a quiet decade. Second, it reminds the Chinese public that this issue never actually closed. And there's a third layer, one that goes deeper than diplomacy. Tibet is a story about the victims of communist rule. A history this US administration has been unusually willing to name directly. What's unfolding now isn't just about human rights or cultural survival. It's about regional geopolitics. It's about water security across Asia, since Tibet's plateau feeds the rivers a third of humanity depends on. And underneath all of it is a reckoning that still hasn't happened, for what was done to Tibet. I'll be picking this thread up again next week. If this gave you something to think about, hit like, drop a comment with your take, and share it with someone who needs to see it. That's what keeps this conversation alive. See you next time.